Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Abby, thank you so much for being with me in Concord, New Hampshire, as we sit down and talk about your story and your book, The Year of Dating Myself. So you live in New Hampshire now, but you're not originally from here. So what brought you to New Hampshire?
Basically happenstance.
Okay.
The man that I was married to at the time, during that, the Great Recession of 2008, which at this point sounds really like quaint in comparison to like the modern day. Like I kind of miss the days of like the Great Recession, but he had lost his job and we were living in the Boston area. He was working in the Boston area and he found a job in New Hampshire. And originally he's thinking, okay, I'm technically going to go against rush hour traffic. I can do this commute. Within 8-9 months, he's like, I can't do this commute. And at that point, I had already graduated college. We were just about to get married because, we were that kind of couple who was going to get married right out of college, too. And I was like, you know what? Let's go on this adventure. Sure. Like, you know what? I don't really care too much for the job that I have right now anyways. Let's do it. What a great excuse to quit. And that's what brought me up. And, even though that marriage didn't work out and, I have nothing but praise for my ex-husband, it really was just a case of like, don't marry your high school or your college sweetheart, especially, or at least don't do it right outside of college. Wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though it didn't work out, I fell in love with the state and I'm like, nah, I'm keeping the state in the divorce, if you will.
I love that. Yes. That's awesome. I think it's such a good experience to live other places because it is, I think, a great way to learn things about yourself. And even like, not just when you're young, but as you grow too, I think we are constantly evolving, or we should be anyway. And so to be able to move around like that, I mean, there's pros and cons, of course, because moving is not easy either. But I think it can be just a really great way to introduce yourself to something new and even like discover something new about yourself.
100%. And I will say it as someone who I am just like a few days out from turning 39. And I'll say that we are still constantly growing and evolving. I'm still constantly growing and evolving. There's always new things for me to learn about. And it's a huge reason why I love, being able to live in different places or even getting that chance to like travel around and see how you respond in all these different contexts. Because that's the only way you're going to learn about all the different facets of yourself is if you put yourself into different contexts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I do love saying that I think travel is the best teacher that you'll ever have. I don't think that's a unique thought by any means. I think a lot of people that travel believe that as well. But I think it's true. It creates situations that would not exist in other contexts. And it allows you also to kind of play this role of being almost anonymous in a way, and where you can kind of like be a different version of yourself with very low emotional stakes. Like, well, if this doesn't go well, at least I don't live here, or at least like this isn't my family that I'm doing this in front of. So you're in New Hampshire. You love it. That's wonderful. Normally how I start this is by asking you, if I ask where your story starts, what does that mean to you?
Ooh, I have almost there's that long-term answer and then there's the short-term answer because, when I think about especially what has kind of brought me on this like really incredible journey of dating myself and all these things, like what starts my story is in a bathtub or in my bathtub at like the absolute lowest moment post breaking up with a really, really just not healthy for me, very toxic, borderline abusive boyfriend and going, Jesus, how did I get here? And that's kind of where that story starts. And then in some ways, even just thinking about the longer term story, where does it start? In some ways, it starts whatever my, that first memory is as a child, because really what led me up to that moment too, in terms of even the more shorter term adventure, it didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened within the context of everything that happened before. That story is a chapter, and I can see all the pieces of that childhood of mine that contributed to the relationship choices I was making, and especially staying in that really unhealthy relationship. And instead of noticing the red flags or that first time he really disrespected me and going, you know what, this ain't it. You are not the Prince Charming you sold yourself as. I'm going to see myself out. Instead, I double down and like, oh no, I'm going to make this work and I can prove I'm worthy of his respect. Oh boy, I can see all the echoes all the way back from childhood.
Yeah.
Really can. In some ways, then the answer really is, well, the story starts whatever my first conscious memory is onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really do love that you went back there because as somebody who has and continues to be in therapy, working on something specific that was somewhat like recent, right? So after my divorce, I got into therapy specific for going through my divorce. And we did all of that. But then it was like going backwards, right? So what led up to this? Because you're right. This stuff usually doesn't happen in a vacuum. And even if it did, even if there was like a random occurrence that happened, it doesn't mean that your lens that you're looking at the situation through isn't affected by the things that have come before. And I think it's important to also say, like, when we talk about trauma and we talk about our past and things that have happened to us and even going to therapy, it doesn't have to be this like big, crazy drama-filled thing for us to reflect on it, right? And reflection doesn't mean that we are looking at something as being bad or as being wrong. Reflection is just a tool that we are able to use to kind of filter through our memories and our experiences and put them in context. So I think it's great that you mentioned that you did have to go back because, for better or worse, I think everything that we live through contributes to how we see what we move through presently and in the future as well.
Oh, 100%. I always think about that Anais Nin quote of, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And as someone who has been in therapy with this current therapist since 2021, but off and on for the last like decade plus, like I very much believe in like, that ability to reflect. And just like you said, like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, think about what you did while you stand in the corner kind of reflect. Although I think for some people, you say that word and they immediately think, oh, you're trying to shame me and put me in my corner to think about what I did. I see it as the check engine light. I like, to this day, I will have those moments of just like, all right, let me pause. What is my actual motivation for why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling or doing the thing I'm doing? Let me pop the hood and check the engine. Doesn't mean I need to, if I'm going to beat this metaphor into the ground, doesn't mean I have to sell this car or replace the engine or anything like that. It just means I'm just kind of seeing what's going on instead of going on, like, essentially, again, to beat this metaphor into the ground, just going on cruise control and hoping for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think it's majorly important. And we move better. I'll come on to your metaphor here. We move better when we're well oiled, right? When we are taken care of, when we are maintained, right? We are able to move through the world better for other people, but also for ourselves, right? Like when we're able to, therapy is a tool, where it gives us tools. And so to be able to move through situations, having this set of tools is massively helpful for us as human beings, I think.
I think about the times pre-therapy when I lived in that cruise control on that autopilot. And honestly, that was not a very happy life. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of orbiting situations and never having that ability to break the pattern and go, okay, wait a minute, let me take that step back. And yeah, is the process of getting to that place where you have that tool set and you have that ability to kind of like, all right, let me take that moment. Let me see what I can do to essentially just intervene on my behalf.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that is really tough. And don't get me wrong. And I say this as someone who did EMDR therapy. That was brutal. But I'm so glad I did it because on the other side, especially in comparison to who I was, in that autopilot mode, this is a happier person. This is a more authentic person. Like, you really can't hide from yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're not seeing it cognitively and consciously, you're feeling it on that body nervous system level.
Oh, absolutely. So what inspired you to write this book? Well, I guess it would have to be what inspired you to even go on this journey of dating yourself. I think it's probably something that everybody can envision when you say, what does that mean on some level? But what led up to, okay, I'm committing to this?
Oh, man. In some ways, it was that hitting rock bottom because, especially after my marriage, which, again, nothing but praise for my ex-husband, but it also meant I was in the dating world for the first time since I was a teenager. And I never really gave myself a time to process anything. So I would hop into the first relationship with the first, guy who give me the warm and fuzzies, and it would bottom out, and I would throw my hands up in the air and be like, oh my God, that's it. I'm never dating again. I'm going to focus on me. Lo and behold, oh no, here's some other guy who's come into my orbit, and I hop onto that situation. Lather, rinse, repeat. And each time I would have this go with the rodeo, it would get worse than the one before. And, I would look back on it and realize that with each cycle, I'm getting a little more desperate. I'm getting a little more like, no, I have to find my Prince Charming now, which simultaneously rings the dinner bell for guys with not the best motives in the world. And it also means that there's a lot of red flags that I'm going to start dismissing outright. And so here I am, I had just gotten out of it. It was about a 10-month relationship closing in on a year, give or take how much you want to count the talking stage, if you will. And I really got out by the skin of my teeth. To say that I barely knew my up from down at that point, like I really was. I know the term gaslighting has been done to death, but I was gaslit into oblivion. I really had a rough go at even having a proper grip on reality. And on top of it, I was missing him and knowing exactly why I broke up with him, but also being like, well, maybe was I really right in doing it? I was in a rough headspace. And there I was. It was the day that he had dropped off my stuff, and I was crying in his arms, even though I should not have been doing that. I should have just been drop the stuff off on my porch and get the fuck out. But so here I am. I'm in this bathtub. I'm doing a bubble bath because I'm doing the most cliched self-care imaginable.
Hey, you do what you gotta do.
Exactly. And you know what? It's a cliche because it's common, and it's common because it works. And it really was this one thing that was keeping me from feeling like I would completely suffocate on myself. And I had this moment where I really went, how did I get here? And that is one of those moments where that check engine light had clicked on, and it was like, all right, time to pop the hood. And having that moment of doing that retrospective and realizing, wow, I have been relationship hopping. I would not be single for more than a month or two, if that. Lather, rinse, repeat every time some guy got into my orbit, and I never gave myself a chance to be single. And every time I would be like, oh, you know what? That's it. I'm done. It was never about me or for me. It was a response to that, whatever heartbreak. And deep down I was going, but maybe my Prince Charming will come around and prove me wrong. And, it was this realization of I have been so codependent. I really haven't had much identity outside of romantic relationships. And I'm having this revelation. And mind you, this is around mid to end of September, which is very fitting because as we're recording this, we're around that same time frame. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this information? Am I going to just be single, but this time mean it? That doesn't feel that feels empty. What's actually going to be the part two? And it was very clear the universe was conspiring for me because the way that things came together, one of my friends said, hey, I'm going to be going to Arches National Park for New Year's. Do you want to come with me? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. And so I impulsively bought a ticket to meet her at the Vegas airport, which was already out of character for me. I'm a tedious planner. I get very neurotic about that kind of stuff. And here it is. It's this New Year's trip, and it's New Year's Eve too. It can't get more on the nose than this. It's New Year's Eve. We're driving back to our Airbnb. I'm just on my phone, just kind of scrolling through, and I'm scrolling through my emails, and there's an email from my favorite band. And they're going to be playing in New Hampshire in April of this upcoming year. And every time they're in the area, I go. And I have a few friends who are also huge fans of this particular band. So I go over to, the Ticketmaster website, and I'm already thinking about which friend I might invite along, only to see it's nearly sold out. Truly, truly almost sold out. There's one seat here, one seat there, and that's it. And I go, well, okay, that's a bust. But before I completely exit out of Ticketmaster, I have this moment of well, when was the last time you went to a concert by yourself? Which in some ways was a rhetorical question because I've never been. I knew that. I already knew that. There was no oh, when was the last time? No. Never. And the reality was I've never been to anything by myself. Like I always had somebody in tow, and it usually was a partner. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Let's get one of those like last remaining solo seats. I'm going to take myself out to that concert. And it was that verbiage specifically of I'm going to take myself out and something just clicks. And I kid you not, it is New Year's Eve. It is like 2 hours out from the new year. And I switch over to my notes app and I start writing out the things that I want to do in this new year, all the places I want to go to, people I want to visit, and also specifically things I want to do, whether it was traditional dates that you typically do with a partner or even just like adventurous stuff, like and even little things. Like I had multiple partners who were very easily motion sick, so we never went on Ferris wheels. So I was like, go on a giant Ferris wheel, like these kind of things that were on my basically to-do list for the year. And then literally, as I'm ringing in the new year, I am titling this notes app The Year of Dating Myself.
I love that. That is fantastic that it really came together in such a clear vision for you. And it wasn't, I mean, it would have been fine either way, obviously, because it's your experience. But the fact that you had such a clear vision of what this next year was going to be and the timing of it, and that you could really just kind of hit the ground running, brand new year, you know, all of us with our New Year's resolutions that we like don't stick to 90% of the time. And you had this really beautiful chance to kind of shift the narrative on what a resolution might look like, right? Because it wasn't ways to necessarily improve yourself, but the byproduct of it was going to be an improved version of yourself or an enhanced version of yourself because you were focusing so much of your time on you and the things that brought you joy.
Yes. And, it was the first time that I wasn't doing the New Year's resolution. And usually I would do those really kind of cliched ones. I'm going to go to the gym more. I'm going to eat more healthy. I'm going to improve myself. And this was like, I'm just going to devote time to myself. I have been neglecting this particular person for all intents and purposes my entire life. And it is time to turn my attention to the one person who, honestly, there's only one true lifelong love that we have in terms of true cradle to grave, and that's ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more I think about it as being like a resolution type thing, the more I'm falling in love with the idea of that because I truly think when we remove the expectations of what self-care should look like, we're more able to actually produce self-care that is specific to our own needs. Because obviously, like being active is a great part of self-care. It's an important part of self-care. But that looks different for different people. That may not be in the gym. That may be joining a rec league for soccer or hockey or something. It may be hiking. It may be, all of these different things that can fall under the general umbrellas of self-care that we have come to understand as self-care, but without really pigeonholing ourselves into things that we're not going to stick to because they don't actually fit into our lives. They don't make us happy. And I think self-care should, on some level, bring us joy, right? Not everything that we do has to be like the most fun thing, but we shouldn't hate it either, right?
Oh my God, 100%. And this is something that I even had to contend with, I'd say around the midway mark of the year of dating myself, where recognizing that self-care also kind of looks like taking it easy, doing like, even just, what, I'm going to go for a stroll. I'm not necessarily doing these like gigantic things because I had to really contend with the fact that like, yeah, I'm doing all these really big ticket items and this is awesome. But one of the really toxic things that I would always do in every single relationship is I would bend over backwards, breaking my back to prove how worthy I am. I am worthy of this guy's time and attention. I'm worthy of him to keep me in his life. I'm like, am I starting to do that for myself? Am I starting to bend over backwards, breaking my back to try to prove to myself that my own company is worth it?
Yeah.
And that was like a really sobering moment because especially around like month 5, month 6, I was exhausted and giving myself that chance to go like, it's okay if it looks like just finding things that do bring me joy, like a movie night in, making myself popcorn and cookies, like, It doesn't have to be like, I think of the person who goes to the gym 5 times a week, not because it's good for their mental health and it makes them happy and they enjoy the meditative element of gym. It's because, well, no, I need to lose weight so I can have some good photos for my Tinder profile. Like, that's going to bottom out so quickly.
Yeah. I agree. I think that there's so much in life that we already do because we're supposed to be doing it. And I really do love this conversation as a woman or as women in our 30s who are essentially bucking societal norms, which is becoming more and more common for women. And this is a conversation I've had several times recently where we're really the first generation of women who have not needed men to be able to survive in the world. And I mean that on a very practical level. Like, we're able to open bank accounts, we're able to own property, we're able to have credit cards. Like, as late as the 70s and 80s were those things not possible. So I think we're seeing a massive shift in women because the playing field has changed so drastically. And I think there's a lot of conversations that could be had around that. So, that's a huge topic of conversation. But I think, to your point about bending over backwards to prove that you're worthy of the time being spent, I think another aspect that I can think of is proving that my choice of being single is something that is valuable, right? So like having to do enough things to prove that I'm in the right space currently and I'm not quote unquote missing out on not having the life I'm supposed to have right now at this point in being, in my mid 30s. So, not having the kids and not having the family and the husband and whatever. And I can absolutely get caught up in this idea of well, I have to have 6 trips planned in a year and I have to be doing all of these fun things all of the time. Otherwise, people are going to look at me and be like, what is she even doing? Why? What is she even doing with her life? And part of that is me putting that on myself. Part of it is I want to be doing fun things. So, it's not totally I'm living a life that I don't want. Mm-hmm. But the perspective of, am I doing this because it's bringing me joy, or am I doing this because this is the only way people will accept the path that I've chosen to take?
Oh, I feel that in my soul because that element of, the woman in her 30s who is not married and has kids, well, that's the haggard, washed up, used up, nobody wants her. And it's scary to watch. There's been a resurgence of, a lot of podcast bros who are saying this message now even louder than before. And it really does. It's so easy then to fall into that opposite trope, which, in a lot of ways, again, the trope is there for a reason of the single woman in her 30s is well, no, I'm not alone and sad with my cats and, eating tuna out of the can. No, I'm going I'm going on all these cool trips. I'm off to Barbados. I'm going to go off to Venice and and again, on the one hand, the reason why that trope exists is because I would love to be living in a world, especially budget-wise. If I had the kind of money to burn on a Barbados trip and Venice and Iceland and all these, I'd be there in a minute. But there is that feeling of because we definitely get that question of wait, you don't have family, you don't have kids. How is your life meaningful? Mm-hmm. And it's oh great, now I got to bend over backwards to show people this is meaningful. Look at all the places I'm going, the things I'm doing, the hobbies I'm in. Look at my meaning. Where I remember one of my very first therapists would tell me, it's enough to just be.
To exist. Yes. Yeah. And I think, I don't necessarily want to turn a conversation into a us versus them thing. That's not why I'm bringing this up. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that this is not something that most men have to contend with when they are single in their late 20s, 30s, even 40s. The idea of why are you single?
Exactly. I mean, there's no, and again, I say this as somebody who is currently in a loving relationship with a man. Definitely no misandry over here, but there's a lot to be said about the gender expectations that a woman is a spinster if she's not married with kids. If a guy is not married with kids, he's a playboy, he's an adventurer. There's no, oh, he's at home alone with his dog.
Yeah.
Like, there's not, if anything, they'd be like, oh, he's out adventuring with his dog, even if he is feeling really lonely and the only companion he has is his dog. Society will view that as like, no, look at the Lone Ranger, if you will. The brooding big heart he has as he explores whatever it is he's exploring.
Yeah. He's just the lone wolf, whatever. Very romantic ideology. And to that point as well, it can be super harmful for men who maybe do want to talk about that they're not satisfied with where they are in life, but like don't necessarily know who or how to talk about that, because there is an assumption that you're just like always okay. So
exactly.
I think we veered off a little bit here, which is part of what this podcast is. So, I'm not going to get too upset about it, but I do want to focus in on your story. You start your ringing in the new year with your list. Can I ask what year this is that you are starting off?
Oh my goodness. I think this was 2022 into 2023. So 2023 would have been the year of dating myself.
The full year. Cool. Okay. So how does it feel to get started? Are you like, talking about resolutions, are you like super gung-ho, or are you a little bit like timid in how you're approaching this?
In some ways, both. Super gung-ho in anything that would involve, say, friends, where, I had friends kind of like scattered across the country. It's like, oh, what a great time to go out and see them. And I'm like contacting all of them. I'm like, hey, can we plan something in this month or that month? And, there'd be these smaller things that, like, as I'm getting the pieces together, like getting this particular concert ticket or buying a ticket to this particular event, like, really getting excited in the planning phase. The execution phase was definitely a lot more, like, the timidity was there. For example, it took like 6 months before I'd go to a restaurant by myself. Like, up until then, despite going out to dinner and being the most common first date ever, I didn't do that until 6 months in. I can't think of any other relationship where you wait till the 6-month mark to go out. Ooh, let's not do something as intimate as go out to dinner together, And so, like, I would have these moments too of even the smaller things, like going to a concert or going to an event where, especially these events where not necessarily it mattered whether or not you came with somebody, but because I was used to going in through the door with somebody, this feeling of like, that fear of like, maybe I should just turn back. Maybe there's an excuse not to do it. There were a few that literally the only reason that kept me from completely giving in to that fear was, well, I have it. I not only had it in my notes app, but I had it as those bullet points that you can click on to get the little check mark.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will lose my ability to do the little check mark if I don't go through that door. And that sometimes that was the only thing, that little, like, you're going to miss out on dopamine of knowing that you got to say you went to this event. So here we go. And so there was some high timidity, especially at first.
Yeah. I think the being able to check something off a list, I think that has like so much more value than we give it credit for, especially as people that like logistics and like to plan. I will literally write sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I will write something down on a list that is like the most base. I might have already done it too, just so I can cross it off, because I'm like, I need a win right now. So we're going to check this off, and that's going to help me with all of my other stuff. So totally understand that.
Feel that in my soul.
Had you done a lot of solo stuff prior to this? And I don't mean like travel to see friends, but just doing stuff by yourself before this.
I'd say the only thing that I really did by myself was hiking. I'd been a solo hiker for years at this point, and very fittingly, I had turned to solo hiking. Basically, the year that my marriage fell apart was also the year that my father's health tailspin and he eventually passed away. And there was like a bunch of other like big crisis things that happened in that year. And so as I'm dealing with the fallout of my marriage being on the rocks and all, my father passing away, I just went off and hiked by myself, because especially at that point, I was working as a yoga instructor. Those are some weird hours. There's nobody else who's going to have a similar schedule. And also, I kind of just wanted to be alone. And eventually, that just evolved into just really enjoying being by myself in the woods. So that was one area where part of the year of dating myself was returning to hiking, because somewhere along the line, life kind of just caught up, starting to go back to school. working a slightly different job where now my hours are a little more traditional, and it also means cool. I don't have as much time now to go out and hike. And I wanted to return back to that because that in some ways gave me a taste of what it is like to do something out on your own and how empowering it is when the only person you can rely on is yourself.
Yeah. I find it actually so interesting that the one thing that's, like, kind of dangerous to do by yourself is the one thing that you've done by yourself.
Ironically enough, it's like, hike the White Mountains, which, any Appalachian Trail through hiker will tell you, like, that is the most, like, the roughest 60 miles of the entire damn trek. And here I am just like, not even a second thought that I'm doing it by myself. But go to Applebee's by myself? Oh, forget about it. I gotta tell the host table for one. Just give me a black bear any day of the week.
That is hilarious. Oh my goodness. I love it. But honestly, good for you. Truly. I do so many things by myself. Hiking is one that I have not been able to truly get myself to do simply from a safety aspect. And like, that's my own, read too many true crime stuff. But I obviously, I really don't believe in living in fear. And I do think that you can do things safely. Right? Like, tell people where you're going, tell people like an approximate time when you believe you're going to be back, whatever. So I do think that there are ways to do that safely or as safely as possible. And so, but it is something that I've been thinking about because I'm going to like these really cool places by myself. And I would love to be hiking through some of these spaces. And I just haven't like done it yet. So maybe this will be my sign or my push to do that.
Absolutely.
So tell me about the first time you went to dinner by yourself and what that was like for you.
Oh, man.
Because I will tell you, it's something I do very often, just traveling by myself. That is probably the number one thing people say that they can't imagine doing is having a meal by themselves at a restaurant.
Oh, yeah. And especially on paper, like the trope of, oh, table for one, like how sad, how pathetic, like, which I get it. And it's why it took like half the year. And I remember preparing for it. Like, I feel like I prepared more for that. Like, my purse that I was preparing was with more care than probably my backpack when I'm hiking, ironically enough. And I'm like, okay, I've got my book and I also have, my AirPods in case I, need to just kind of drown things out. Like, I'm having all these like provisional stuff in my bag. And, having that moment of, you walk up to the hostess and I'm almost like apologizing, like, it just won. Like, felt like so incredibly like, oh my God, what am I doing? But I'll tell you, there's something so empowering when they do sit you down at that table and that's your table.
Yep.
And, the waitress is coming up or the waiter's coming up and they're talking to just you. And there's something really cool about like, oh man, I'm owning this space. This is kind of awesome. And, I had a few people kind of like look back and see that I was, table for one. And the funniest thing is that worry, the concern of like, oh my God, like that weirdo wasn't even there. It was almost more like, oh, they're intrigued by me. Like, what is this woman doing sitting by herself? And she's just reading a book and like made me think of all the, the food critics who are going table for one because they're busy like testing the food, or the person who's out on a business trip and doesn't have time to, oh, man, I got to figure out a colleague who's going to go with me. No, I don't have time for that. I need to go have dinner by myself. And, like, there was just something really cool about that, and I'll admit it, we're 2+ years out from that experience, and to this day, I'll still kinda go, "I just won." It's so hard to drop the just.
Yeah, I agree.
But, I mean, aside from that, it became, like, a lot easier where if I'm, especially work-related, sometimes work will have me all over the place, and, definitely will not get back in time to have food, like, at home, so I will go, "Oh, well, I'll just," I'm not gonna go to McDonald's, especially these days where fast food is just as expensive as restaurant food. I might as well get restaurant quality food. So now it's a lot easier to just go in, get the just one table, but it's still, I'm going in, like, give me that table for one.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think that it is one of my favorite things to do by myself because of how much you can romanticize the experience that you can't always do when you're with people. I have my grandfather always talked about romanticizing your meals. So when we went out to dinner with him, it was like 3+ hours for dinner because, you would sit down, you would order drinks, and then like have the server go away. Not in a mean way, but just like, this is all we're going to order for now until we've kind of enjoyed our drinks, and then we'll order an appetizer. And then we're not going to order dinner when we order appetizers. We're waiting till we finish the appetizers to then order dinner, because the whole thing was an experience. And so growing up, like, I always had that in my head, but it's hard when you're with friends or even like family to make the time to do that. And so I try when I am by myself to, as much as possible, do that, because a lot of times, like, I don't have any other plans, right? It's me. So dinner is the plan. There's no like nothing to get to afterwards. And I agree. It's really hard to, it's like, to this day, I've been doing this for years. To this day, I still get really intimidated in asking for the table. And it's mostly because I'm like, not because I'm alone, but because I'm like, they don't want to see a single person because like that's less money, or, they're going to assume this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
By the way, I've never had an issue with it. Like, nobody's ever given me a hard time, but I will consciously like go earlier to eat when I know it's not going to be like super busy, because I don't always want to eat at the bar and I want a table, and like that doesn't necessarily jive with a restaurant full of like a lot more than one people trying to get seated. But once I'm there at my table, you're right. Like, that is my table. I rule the table. I am the ruler of the table. And yeah, I think it is a really empowering experience and a great way to romanticize your life and to fully be present in what you're doing.
Yes. Oh my, I love that idea of the romanticizing the meal, because I think about like when I would be even just like out with friends, I would be the person lost in conversation. They've already finished their food, and then I'm over here like, shit, let me just get a doggy bag.
Yeah.
Like, I even had one friend remark like, oh, you're a really slow eater, which the funniest thing is, especially in my day-to-day life, I scarf food down because, usually I barely have time for that full meal anyways. So I'm scarfing it down and then on to the next thing. But like, if I was having conversation with somebody, I'm not scarfing it down. Meanwhile, they are scarfing it down, ready for that next thing. And, this idea of like, no, like quite literally savor, not just savor the food, but savor the time. And I feel that on the going on the off hours, because I feel like maybe in my older age, loud noises just get a little harder to process. Even if I'm with people, it's kind of like, what are your thoughts on like a 4 p.m. dinner? Because that sounds nice. That sounds really nice.
And then I have time to go home and get into my pajamas.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Every once in a while I'll have friends who are like, oh, let's go meet in Boston. We'll have dinner. And we're having dinner at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. We go in and, it's nightlife time at that point. And I'm just kind of like, oh, when can I get home and get back in bed? So it is really nice to, again, own the table when there's not like it packed around you, chatter everywhere.
Yeah.
Savor the moment.
Yeah, savor the moment for sure. And I think, hopefully this is an encouragement to people, because again, like, this is something I hear over and over again from people, especially women, is like, I could never do that. I could never eat by myself. I could never, whatever. And so they do the fast food or they do takeout, whatever. But I think there is something to the experience of being there by yourself and enjoying the meal. And you know what? Maybe it's not for everybody, and that's okay. But I do think you should try it. And I think that there are ways to do it so you don't feel so uncomfortable. Bring your book, bring your headphones. Absolutely. Like, you don't have to sit and stare at the wall for this to be a good experience. I always have a book with me, like literally everywhere I go, just in case. I will often, because trying new places is one of the best parts of travel, right? So like, I'm not necessarily going to the place that nobody's going to. I want to go to the popular places that have great reviews. So I will make a reservation for myself, right? Because then at least they know I'm coming as one person, right? They can expect to see a one top table, or I'll go on off hours. So let this be an encouragement for anybody that's on the fence. There are ways to do it so that you don't feel so awkward. You're going to feel awkward anyway the first time you do it, but it's totally worth doing.
100%. It's kind of like that quote of be afraid, do it anyways. And it's like, be awkward, do it anyways.
Yeah, exactly. That just should be life in general, right?
It's all 100%.
Okay, so superlatives. What is the craziest thing that you did during your year of yourself? Craziest or weirdest, I guess.
Let's see. What would be the craziest thing that I did with the year of dating myself? I think in some ways, this is actually something that didn't end up making it into the book. So this will be kind of like a little exclusive for the listeners. Because, and I know this is an audio only, so you don't necessarily get to see my ears, but I've got a good number of earrings in my ears. And I had decided it was completely on whim. One of my friends was asking if I could join her while she was going to get something re-pierced. And I was like, girl, I'll do you one better. I'm going to get something pierced. And at this point, I just had my regular earlobes and admittedly also my navel done that I got done when I was like 18. But, which is what you do when you're 18, especially 18 in the early aughts. You got your belly button pierced. But that was it. And so I'm like researching what I want to do. And I end up getting what's known as my rook pierce, which is, one of the little folds, if you will. And just from there, like periodically, I'd be like, you know what? I'm feeling called to get piercing. And so I went from having basically just one piercing in my earlobes to like, I think it's like 3 or 4 on each side minimum. It really, I look back on that now and I'm just like, that really, I was so leaning into my wild child side, where it was just like, nah, I just feel like going getting pierced. And yeah, the first one was being kind of like the tag along for a friend. But, the same way me from the previous years, if I had been so called to get pierced, I would have been doing the same thing. Like, hey, can a friend come along with me for moral support? And this time around, it's like, oh, you know that the piercing parlor is open for another like 3-4 hours. I'm going to just swing by and, get my second earlobes or my third earlobes done.
Yeah, totally. I got my nose pierced when I was 31.
Nice.
And I remember just like I hadn't been wanting a nose piercing. It like just kind of popped into my head like, oh, that I kind of think I would like that. And it was the doubt of like, oh, you can't have too many piercings. Like people are going to think something about you, blah, blah, blah. What they were going to think, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have any specific thoughts about other people that had nose piercings. So, but I woke up and I was like, you know what? The world is already like so crazy and honestly like so shitty. Who cares if I have a nose ring? And that was like the reason I decided to get it. And I am so happy I did because I love it. And the world didn't end. And I think it was like just such a good lesson for me of people aren't watching you as closely as you think that they are.
Oh, my word, 100%. And I have a parallel enough story that gave me that exact same realization where, one of the cool things that will have, like, not all ticket selling sites, and I don't think Ticketmaster does this at all, will do, but what they'll do is if there is that one seat left, that price drops precipitously. And I remember there was Craig Ferguson was coming into Boston and there were these like, I know, right? Oh, I have been a fan of him since the Drew Carey show, the Late Late Show. I've seen all of his, at least the stand-up that has been on DVD and Comedy Central. I've seen all of them. Huge fan. So of course he's coming into Boston. I'm like, yes. And, they'll have the theater that he was in has those like box seats off to the side. And they're like, it's like a row of 3. And there was this one little standalone, like it's very clear, like a couple had bought the tickets. And now there's this one standalone seat and it was like half price. It was even cheaper than the mezzanine. And I was like, okay, rock and roll, let's do this. Like, I want to see Craig Ferguson for $45. I'm game. But I had this moment of pure panic because I'm like, at least in a full row, if you're sitting alone, no one cares, especially if the row is already filled up. Everyone's just sitting. This is going to be so obvious. I am going to quite literally be the third wheel. I'm going to be the third seat. And the funniest thing is when that, that little box seat area filled up, which it also included that couple. I mean, they didn't even acknowledge my existence. They didn't even look over my way. They sat down, like they were in the middle of conversation. They sat down, kept conversation. And I was like, oh, wow, no one cares. And there's something so freeing in that when you realize, oh my God, nobody cares. Everyone's just in their own worlds. I can do what I want. Obviously not like go vandal and steal, do what I want, but like,
Yes.
nobody is like having their binoculars going on like, okay, who can I judge in this very moment?
Yes, yes. And really, like, when we turn that back on ourselves and think, like, how often am I looking at other people and, like, judging them just, like, on site, right?
Mhm.
It's very little time that we spend doing that. Most of the time, we spend wondering what other people are thinking about us. And so, once we realize that everybody is kind of the same in that regard, it's very liberating to then say, "Who cares?" Like, literally no one. Literally no one cares.
Exactly. And I think of like the only times where I will notice like a solo person is when like they're exuding this confidence. They're like walking down the street with like the most like badass eye-catching outfit and they're strutting their stuff, or maybe they are the person who's got that table for one and it is clear that they are loving that space and they're just again exuding confidence, and my first thought will be like, damn, they're living their best life.
Yeah.
And like that's the kind of place where I want to be, where it's like if somebody's noticing me, it's because I'm having such a good time and I am exuding that confidence that makes them go, wow, she's living her best life, go get it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. And even if, people aren't even if you aren't exuding that confidence, I think, you know, again, we assume so much, but we assume that people like clock us and then continue to think about us.
Mhm.
Wherein it's like, oh, that person's by themselves. I wonder why, and then that's it. Like, no other thoughts, right? So, really, it truly is just such a, freeing thing to do things by yourself and to realize that people really aren't as interested in what you're doing as you think they are.
This is so true.
Just like you're not really interested in what other people are doing either while you're trying to live your life. So, yeah, I think it's such a worthwhile endeavor to spend time by yourself, spend time doing things by yourself, because I do think it's a way that we learn about ourselves that we can't always learn, the things that we can't always learn when we're with other people, right?
Mm.
What we're capable of, what we are able to do for ourselves, the things that we're able to sit with, the things that we enjoy. And not that enjoying them with other people is wrong by any means. I think we're built for community. I don't think we should live in isolation, but it is such a good exercise, I think.
Yes, 100%. And, one of the big things that I blew my mind the first time I went to, I think it was like a dueling pianos event, like in February. And it was the first like event that I'm going by myself. And there was this weird uneasiness to it, not because I was alone, but because I realized that every time I would go to anything with other people, my experience was always filtered through how are they doing? Are they
Mm,
having a good time? If and sometimes that could be a very positive
yeah.
experience where if you're having a lot of fun and they're having a lot of fun, it's like it's exponential. But it's also one, you're checking in on them, and two, if they're not having a good time, especially for me and the kind of baggage I was lugging around with me, if you will, especially pre-therapy, if they were not having a good time, well, I better stop having a good time and tend to them because it is my responsibility to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And to realize like, no, I'm here at this dueling pianos event. And the only person I need to filter my experience through is me.
Mm.
The only person I need to check in on right now is me. Holy smokes. I feel like everybody, even if they don't necessarily carry that kind of like bad boundaries, codependent baggage the way that I did, should at least get a few experiences where you never have to filter your experience through how is everybody else doing.
Yeah.
And you just get to filter it through how you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Because I think what you're talking about very much is, on some level, human nature. And it's not always a bad thing, but it is a different experience when you are doing it for yourself, by yourself. Was there a point through this year that you wanted to give up on it?
Yeah, honestly, where, especially around that 6-month mark, I was feeling the exhaustion. And around like 7, 8 months, I really was like, man, I am glad that I have planned this out, because if I was just kind of going, we'll see where it goes, it'll be the time of dating myself. This is probably where I would have like kind of given up because it's lost its luster.
Mm.
And for me, that was the most important time for me to really kick in, because a lot of relationships for me would always be under a year, where the guy is super into me and, oh my God, I'm so excited. I've got this hottie and she's so into me, blah, 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 blah. And then the luster fades because of the simple fact that novelty fades. Now things are routine. I'm not new and shiny anymore. This is an actual relationship. And that's usually when my heart would get broken because, well, I'm not the new shiny anymore. So they're either breaking up with me, cheating on me, or they're just kind of doing that weird fade out where now I'm the one jumping through hoops to get to see him again. I can't do that with myself. I need to prove that I am worth keeping, keeping that company, not because I'm the new shiny, not because this is novel, but because I'm worth companionship. So that really was that was a huge area of yeah, no, okay, I'm a little bit tired. I'm a lot bit tired. That does mean that I need to be a little smarter about not just doing all these big ticket items, which also in some ways gets into that novelty element of
Sure.
it's not just about the new exciting. It's about that day-to-day devotion and, keep going through it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And I do think from my perspective, and I am not trying to inject my own thing in here, but I relate to so much of what you're talking about just because of my own experiences. Mine wasn't intentional like yours, which I think yours being so intentional is such a great exercise in perseverance and in pushing through the things that are maybe uncomfortable or when the novelty wears off. Because, I may not necessarily be looking at things like that, but it is, I think, an incredibly important piece of getting to know yourself or dating yourself. And I think that when you when you when you're talking about novel experiences or doing things that are quote unquote super fun or other people may not be doing all of the time, right? You're getting to have these experiences that a lot of people maybe aren't because, a family of 4 can't necessarily afford to go on a whim to Barbados or whatever. Whereas you may have a little more flexibility and the pricing might be different because you're last minute deciding these things. I think that is really easy to kind of see the allure and to romanticize, but figuring out how to romanticize our lives in the day to day, I think is really important because while community is an integral part of humanity and really does make up, I think, the bulk of our existence, I think that in my opinion, knowing yourself well enough to be able to be by yourself is a skill.
it really is. And I knew, especially when I was doing that retrospective, I never valued my own alone time. That was always this weird silver medal, oh, I guess fine kind of deal. And that means you're going to be willing to give that up. And you're also going to be willing to give up the peace you feel when you're alone. Well, at least I have somebody in my life. I would see that in myself and I would see that with my friends who would be in these terrible relationships. And the reason they stay in the relationship is not because, no, I have hope that we'll get through this, blah, blah, blah. It was, well, have you seen the dating world out there? It's worse out there. So I guess I'll just stick it out here, as if the only options were be in this relationship or find a new relationship. And there was no third option of you can also be single.
Yeah.
Giving yourself that chance to realize wait a minute, I can actually be in my own company and, the world doesn't end is so vital.
Yeah. Super valuable. Was there a point during this time where not necessarily that you went looking for a relationship, but a relationship kind of made itself available and you had to turn away from that? Or were you just so focused on what you were doing that didn't even cross your path?
In some ways, a little bit of a yes and no, where in terms of a very easy, oh my God, I have to genuinely turn this amazing offer down and I'm really into this person. That never really came into fruition. I did have guys who were sliding in my DMs who would also know that I was on the year of dating myself and still trying to shoot their shot. And I'll be perfectly honest, if I had not been so structured about the year of dating myself, at least one of them I've been okay, you know what? I might as well just see where this goes,
Yeah.
which never works out well. Like, a few of my relationships had been the guy slides in my DMs. Oh, let's see where it goes. Whew, if it goes to hell, that's where it goes. And then on top of that, at one of my jobs, I realized that I was developing a bit of a crush on one of the newer hires. Been there for like 3, 4, 5 months, and every time we were interacting, it was just this really like lovely experiences. Our eyes would light up when we were seeing each other, kind of deal. And I would realize, especially there was one time where like he was saying goodbye as I was saying goodbye, and as the elevator doors close, I realize I'm blushing, and I'm like, oh shit, I have a crush. And I really had to kind of contend with that of like, all right, how and the poor guy probably didn't understand what happened next, because I got a lot more standoffish after that, because my attitude was like, I know this song and dance. I am one of those people, when I crush hard. I start thinking about the possibilities and the opportunities and the potential. I orbit that. And so like, I would just think to myself, like, man, I've been cheated on so many times in so many different ways. The last thing I'm going to do is cheat on myself. Basically, really took that concerted effort to be like, well, obviously, I'm still interacting and like going to be friendly. It's not like I'm going to be like mean to him now, but there was a level of emotional disconnect because I really had to go, all right, I need to do something. And then, as the fates would have it, I would overhear him talking with somebody else. And, it wasn't like I was within earshot and he was trying to let me know that he was taken. I was just overhearing a conversation where he mentioned something about his girlfriend. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't know if there's ever been a time someone who's been so relieved to learn that their crush is off the market. But it was just like, oh my, I don't even have to worry anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But it was this moment of like, wow, like I, in some ways, and I know the concept of protect your peace has been destroyed at this point, but at least back then it was like, I have to really kind of fight to protect this because my old habits are not only dying hard, but they're doing, that extinction burst that they hear, especially in like sociological circles of like, oh, you're trying to get rid of me? What if I crank up the volume? I have to really be careful.
Yeah, definitely. Protect yourself from yourself almost. Which I think, is something that we can all identify with on some level because we know we have the healthy and unhealthy parts of ourselves, right? So fostering the healthy parts while starving the unhealthy parts is a battle that we all contend with. Did you have a point where you started to think like, the grass is going to be greener on the other side, like abandoning this and just going back to, you're talking about your extinction burst. Did you have this moment of like, all right, like this is done. I'm done with this. It would be better. Like I'm healed. I've arrived. I'm healed. I'm done. Like, let me just go on the other side and I'm good to start dating again.
During the actual year of dating myself, and it might have been because of all these pieces coming together and the element of kind of healing from the trauma of my previous relationship, which, as I mentioned in the book, there would be these little areas that either through his actions or honestly my own actions, because I was one of those people where it's like, why heal from what harmed me when I can just get to the bottom of every fucking lie and learn all the truth and, which, in some ways can be useful, but it was very clear I'm orbiting this like a detective as opposed to healing from it. So it took a minute. It took probably all the way up until like the 1-year mark of when I had broken up with him to really be in this place of like, okay, I can just let this go and actually start healing from what happened instead of orbiting it. So the year itself, more or less, I was still like on track. The year afterwards, one of the things that I really was big about was like, I'm not going to go back to any online dating or anything like this. At least not right now. I'm saying that too because, to throw ourselves even more into the future, I would join Hinge just on whim. Like literally I was 2 mimosas in and was just like, oh, you know what, screw it. And then made it, and 5 days later I matched with the man that I'm with today. So, it was very clear. Fate was like, okay, honey, go back on your word for a week and then you're going to meet your man. But at least at that point, it was like, nope, I'm just going to, if I'm meant to be meeting the person, I will. Maybe my friend will introduce. And, honestly, my life was extremely chaotic that year afterwards anyways, just life be lifing. And I remember I would have these moments of, because I was still doing things by myself and really investing in myself. And I was like learning to play musical instruments. And I say that one specifically because I remember having this moment And I'm like literally over my piano keyboard, and I'm like fighting back tears because I'm like, okay, cool. I have all this time to do these cool hobbies and blah, blah, blah. And I'm doing all these things by myself. But what good is this? What good is it? Like, I was so knee deep in the pity party at that point. And I think there was a part of me that almost like was ready to go back and go, okay, nope, let's do it. Let's get our Tinder and our Hinge and our Bumble and let's just power swipe. And, that would have been the worst time to go, by the way. Absolute worst.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the fact that, one, that really did suck, but I'm glad I didn't give into it for a very similar reason that during the year of dating myself, there was the longing for romantic love. There was not necessarily, I'm going to give up on this because grass is greener on the other side, because I was so traumatized by my last relationship that I didn't even believe that what I was longing for even existed. So whatever, I'm longing for a unicorn. I'll go back to dating myself. But I mention all these because as hard as that was, and having that moment, especially when I was pity partying, though in that following year, it showed me that I can also survive it. This has been a really big thing that I get very soapboxy about, because a lot of people, when they're like, well, I can't be single because I'm going to be lonely and I'm going to miss romantic love. And there's a lot of toxic positivity around that, where it will be like, no, you're just going to be so empowered. You're not even going to think about it. And that's BS. Oh my goodness, that is BS across the board. If anything, I think it's important to say, like, well, for some people, they might not miss romantic love. My experience is not the universal one. It's also okay to be like, you're going to miss it, you're going to long for it, and you're going to feel lonely sometimes, and you're going to miss having that hand to hold, and you're also going to survive it. Like, it's so empowering to know that you will survive those pity party moments.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's an important piece of this, is that intentionally being single does have to be done with intention. I think for women specifically, because it is very easy to get into a relationship. Like, if that's all you're looking for, if that is the basis of your desire, is to just be in any relationship, that's very easy to do. And so if that seems better than being single, then in perpetuity, yeah, we're gonna do that. And I find for women, so, a lot of my work is in domestic violence advocacy. And one of the things that I think is really important is staying single after being in in an abusive relationship, whether it's a marriage or a dating relationship, just because we are rebuilding who we are as people. I think one of the other things is that you will go through seasons. Like, if you stay single for a while, you will go through seasons, because I know that there are people that feel like, I'm never going to want that again, right? Like, what I went through was so traumatizing. I'm never going to want that again. And you may feel like that for a good several years. And then you may move out of that, right? And things could change and things could shift. And so I do think it's important to do that work of knowing how to be by yourself, knowing who you are, and healing, because we are constantly evolving and we go through seasons too as human beings. And so our desires change. But if you know who you are and how to deal with your past hurts, your life, and anything that kind of comes into your orbit, you're going to have an easier time, not like stacking your trauma necessarily, but being able to parse out what's for you and what's just not for you.
Oh, 100%. And I remember, especially in that aftermath, and, when I talk about this timeline with that caveat of, I was with this person for 10 months, and that will look different for people who've been in relationships for years. And even if someone else was in a 10-month relationship, they might not have my timeline. Those first 6 months, because I think it was around March, April of the year of dating myself, up until then, the idea of romance sickened me. Like, if there was even a mild romantic subplot in a show, my stomach turned. Like, I specifically remember watching Downton Abbey, which is not exactly like a heavy romance show. Like, there are romantic subplots, but it's not a very heavy on the romance. But every time there was even this tiny little romantic, I was just, oh my God, can we fast forward it?
Yeah.
And I would tell friends, I'm like, I think this has made me aromantic. I don't think I'll ever feel romantic feelings again. And of course, all my friends were like, I know you feel this way now, and we're not going to invalidate, but honey, you're a hopeless romantic. So please don't just set it in stone. And I'm so glad that they did, because for me, once that shock and dismay, the dust had settled, and I had been rebuilding myself up and feeling in a place strong enough to at least have that desire again. It really did feel like the pins and needles of a limb that had been asleep and has started to wake up again. And I'm grateful for my friends to be like, no, this is not set in stone, so let's keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Because it was very jarring to be all of a sudden like, oh my God, I do miss that though. I don't believe it exists. And I still kind of feel like, it's almost like the dog who wants attention, but every time somebody tries to pet them, they cower away. But I also kind of
You've met my dog? How?
Oh, I will use the rescue dog analogy until the cows come home. And we understand, we have so much empathy and understanding for the rescue dog. It's like we got to extend that same empathy and understanding for ourselves, because they're having these complex, desires and wishes to, have a connection, but also be safe. We're in the same boat. Like that's, a lot of our brain structures are identical to the dogs anyways. So on a neurological level, we're having the exact same experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that it is I'm so glad to hear that you had friends that were able to validate your experience, but also say, like, not dig into that almost like defeatism, right? Because that is what it is. If you genuinely don't want to be in a romantic relationship, there is nothing wrong with that. But saying that out of a place of hurt is not necessarily where you're going to stay, right?
Yeah.
Like, it could be, and that's fine. But it could very well be that you're going to move out of that as you heal. And so it is important to say, like, you're allowed to have these feelings, but don't damn yourself beyond repair in service of that feeling that you currently have because of the hurt.
Oh my God, 100%. And, I even think about when I would have these declarations of like, oh my God, that's it. I'm never dating again. And I'll just be single and focus on that's coming from that weird, that complicated place of hurt. Where as soon as the dust is even kind of sort of settled, I've left myself vulnerable to, again, guy slides into my DMs and oh my God, maybe this is my Prince Charming who's going to make it all worthwhile. Let's do this.
Yeah, because there is an element too of like fate, right? Like if you are wanting that and you are a hopeless romantic, which I think many of us are, I think it's another thing that we're very prone to as human beings, right? Like our best selves long for that. There's that element of like, well, I can't pass up this opportunity because like what if this is my one and only chance? What if this is like fate, and if I don't jump on this, then, nothing good is ever going to come for me again. And I think that we have to be able to hold things in tension, to say like, we should be taking advantage of opportunities that come our way, but we should also be discerning of what those opportunities are. And I also firmly believe at this point in my life that like the things that are meant for us will be for us. They will show up for us, right? And they won't pass us by. And so I imagine myself going through an intentional year of dating myself and like getting messages like that, or having that experience and feeling like, well, what if this is the universe telling me, or God or whoever telling me that like this is actually the path that I'm supposed to be on, right? And I think at this point in my life, I can say like, this is what I'm focused on right now. And if that person is truly who is meant for me, they will be there in the future or at a different time in my life. And if they're not, then they won't be, and that's okay. And so I think being able to hold things in tension and being able to hold things loosely so that we're not so worried about like the one right thing at the one right time, and that we're going to miss it. We're going to miss out on the opportunity to be happy.
Yeah. Oh my God. The sheer number of times, in these relationships and bending over backwards because it's like, well, no, this is my opportunity. This is my person. This is, if I if I let this slip by, this is again, I've missed my chance, which, I remember my therapist even pointing out, like, man, there was a lot of like one and only missed your chance, like multiple times in a row. Aren't you noticing that? Which, God bless her. Like, and this is why she's my therapist. She calls me on my bullshit, and I need
Yes.
that, my Lord. But I would look back and I'm like, I would just be holding up both ends of the relationship. I'm the one jumping through hoops and the guy's kind of just like passively, like, barely being bothered. And having that moment of having to really go, like, listen, you don't have to force what's meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if something's not meant for you, yeah, you're going to have to really force it because the universe is trying to say, woman, like, how many obstacles do I have to put in your path before you understand you're not supposed to open this damn door, And again, I reference back to my current relationship where things, when I tell you I had went on Hinge on complete whim after being introduced like 2 times at that point, friends had tried to introduce me to a guy, and those, I will tell you, I had the like, well, I got it, like, this is it, I've been introduced to this person, and this is the friend introduction this is my person, and I have to make this work. And I mean, both of them were extremely short-lived, and it really had me in this sadness spiral because it was that, like, well, no, I've missed out, and I, would be, yeah, I would just kind of orbit around. And here it was, literally Memorial Day weekend. I'm a couple mimosas in. And I'm like, well, I want to get out of this sadness spiral because one of them just really, I just kept thinking about this particular guy. And, well, his birthday's coming up. Maybe I should say happy birthday. And that's how we'll get the conversation started again. And it was like, okay, no, first off, woman, no, you're not. I'm just with one of my friends and she's talking about getting on dating apps. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to remind myself that I'm a baddie with options. And literally, I'm 2 mimosas in at this point, which I'm a lightweight. So I'm wee. And I'm just like, screw it, download Hinge. And it the way everything fell into place, there's not been a single thing that I've had to force because, oh no, I'm gonna miss out. And that's something I wish I could tell past me of like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have to jump through hoops when it's right.
Yeah. So is this kind of the first relationship of its kind for you?
Oh, across the board. It is wild. I always thought that all relationships came with a level of unease where, you have to be a little anxious and a little uncomfortable and a little insecure because, well, that lets you know how much you care about him. Not really.
Yeah.
Like, at least for me. And I also say this knowing that I've been, in therapy for as long as I have and been able to work on myself for as long as I have. But I've also learned that you can do all the therapy in the world and have all the secure attachment practices in the world. But if you're with the wrong person, that's all going to go out the window. But to be with somebody where it is that effortlessness and you feel that nervous system level of safe and, to be with somebody that you can just be your weird self around, like, it has been just this brave new world. And there's a part of me that really goes like, man, if I knew how good it could be, I would have never fucking settled. Oh my God. Like, I just look back on all those times where I was forcing it because what if this is my one and only? It's like, oh, darling, like, that's level 8, maybe 80% connection, and you're trying to force it up to 100%. Wait until you get to experience what level 11 at 100% feels like. And then you will never be like, oh, but I gotta make this work. I'm gonna lose my shot.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy to hear that because I think that everybody deserves that, right? And especially when you have done so much work. Now, as somebody that has done so much work on yourself, was that kind of something that you were thinking about when looking for another partner in terms of what they had done in terms of work on themselves?
Oh, 100%. Because I had learned the hard way that, you can do all this hard work on yourself and it can get unraveled real quickly with somebody who has not done the work on themselves. And that's not to say that, everyone has to look back on their childhood and dig up any trauma that didn't even happen. Like, some people just have really nice childhoods with relatively healthy parents. And, that's awesome. Maybe you're not having to like dig deep into these huge demons from like traumatic childhood experiences, but everybody should be taking that time to go, all right, what are my patterns? Where can I be a bit toxic? What can I do to, be a better person, understand my motivations? Because the sheer number of times that I have gotten just absolutely sidelined by people who would rather burn a village down than do that kind of introspection.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a huge element of, like, if I'm gonna be with someone, they have to be introspective, like, not necessarily have been in therapy, because I fully recognize therapy is a privilege to be able to afford it or even find somebody who's taking new clients, and even then, it's not for everybody, and I fully recognize it, and there's different modalities to explore, but to at least have that ability to, like, let me dig deep, let me be introspective, let me reflect,
Mhm.
let me pop the engine of this car because the check engine light's on, to bring it full circle.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I imagine looking back, this whole experience has been a part of your healing journey. Did you see it as that when you started?
I think so. I think that a huge element was recognizing that, well, one, I need to heal from the just dating disasters that I've been in and finally give myself that space to process. Honestly, 5+ years of relationship disasters that I would just relationship hop. Like, well, I don't need to worry about processing this relationship because I'm now in this new love and that's going to be, everything's great. Now, oh shoot, I have all of these relationships that I need to process and heal from now. And so I went into it already going like, all right, this is going to be a bit of a healing journey. To the level of healing I could never have predicted, like, especially the avenues that I found myself exploring because I'm not distracting myself with dating. But it really was like I went into it almost like I guess the best way to describe it is it was a lowercase h healing journey. And
Mhm.
then through experience realizing, oh, this is a capital H healing journey. All right.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's wonderful that you even had the forethought to recognize it as such from the beginning, because then I think the transition into capital H healing was probably more seamless because you knew that that was the journey that you were on to begin with. Did you know going into it that you were going to write about it?
No, actually. When I first started it, it was 100% like, oh my God, I need to be doing this for myself and, getting really excited about like mapping it out by month. And then it was around the end of January. And this is also what happens if you're a writer, inevitably everything gets filtered through how will I write about it. And I realized that at minimum, I want to be writing about this as much in real time as possible because writing is also where I would gain my insight. There were times that I would be writing about anything in my journal, and as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm connecting the dots. So I was like, okay, I want to write about this, as much in real time as possible. And the first draft is just going to be kind of like a journal. But again, writer's mindset out in the back of my mind, I went, yeah, journal. But second draft, we pare it down, it becomes a book. And so I had that filter, and it's almost like my because at that point I already had a literary agent, and it's like her spidey sense must have gone off because within weeks of me having this realization, I get this email from her because we had been trying to shop around a different book that really just no one was really interested in, which is totally okay. And she was like, "Hey, I know you're doing the year of dating yourself. What are your thoughts on writing a book about it?" And I was like, "Ma'am, do I have something to tell you?" Like, I was prepared to like, okay, wait a minute. I first have to write out the first draft and then pare it down. And then I'm going to send her my proposal and be like, hey, what do you think? And she is just email me in like February, like, what are your thoughts? What are my thoughts? My thoughts are you're reading my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Well, I think that it is something that a lot of people can relate to. Even if they haven't done that, if they haven't intentionally done that, even if they haven't spent any time by themselves, I think people can acknowledge the need for it or
Mhm.
even the recognition of unhealthy patterns
Mm.
and ruts that we kind of everybody knows what it's like to be in a rut, right? To
Mhm.
like not know what the next step is or to not know how to get themselves out of their current situation. It doesn't have to be anything super deeply traumatic. It can just be like life, right?
Yeah.
um so yeah, I think that that's awesome. I think it's wonderful that you chose to write about your experience. If you could give women, especially young women, 20s, early 30s, advice on how to go about dating themselves or even just spending time with themselves and getting to know themselves, what would that be?
I think the first thing is validating that it is gonna be awkward and it's gonna be outside of our comfort zone, like that whole cliche of like growth happens just outside of your comfort zone. So what does that mean? We're uncomfortable. we can validate it, and it's okay to start small. Playing around with, like, what is even, like, one small thing that I typically never do by myself. I always have to rope somebody in, and it could be something as simple as I don't even go on a walk around the block unless my bestie's available or my roommate's available. I never even walk by myself. Okay, what if we went around a walk around the block by ourselves?
Yeah.
We can keep it small, and another element is, especially for somebody like me who would get so wrapped up in romantic relationships, none of my, like, platonic friendships ever really got a chance to really be, like, super, super deep because I would just
Mm.
always be about my partner. It's okay if it becomes what I like to say, like, a group date where it's like, "All right, I'm gonna also reinvest in what it's like to hang out with somebody and have deep connection that's platonic,"
Yeah.
and letting that be kind of also my transition of, I always would go out to dinner only with my romantic partner. Well, what's it like to go out to dinner with just one of my closest friends and we just get a chance to actually invest platonically, and then letting that be kind of the launch pad of like, all right, what's it like if I go to that table for one by myself and
Mm.
give myself that chance to kind of build up. And I think the other piece of advice is we don't have to wait until we're single. Like, I think one of my favorite things has been watching my friends who have been in loving, committed relationships. They're not necessarily in this do or die rock bottom situation the way that I was in. Get that chance to be like, you know what? But it's really important for me to go out to this cafe that I really like and just have coffee by myself, and not
Yeah.
just coffee by myself like in the morning before my husband wakes up, but like I'm deliberately going to take myself out to this cafe that I love and sit down at this table outside and take that time for myself. We don't have to wait until we're hitting rock bottom, and we don't have to wait until we're single, especially if we're in a healthy relationship. And if anything, we should be continuing to date ourselves when we're in that healthy relationship, because it is very easy, even in the best circumstances, to accidentally lose ourselves.
Mm.
So giving ourselves that chance to celebrate our own company. So important.
I love that. I agree wholeheartedly, and I think on both counts, platonic relationships are incredibly important.
Mhm.
And if we're so focused on romantic relationships, they can fall by the wayside. But they add so much depth to our lives. And so
Mhm.
you don't have to have a million friends, but have a couple of people that you're cultivating deep community in life with.
Mhm.
And I do love that it doesn't have to get toxic before you decide to do something. That's
Mhm.
wonderful advice. Because truly, when we are our best selves, we are able to show up better for other people in our lives too. So, making sure that we take that time to date ourselves, to know who we are, to know um, thinking, feeling, desiring, needing is one of the best ways that we can stay healthy in our relationships, romantic, platonic, familial, anything. Yeah, so awesome. What do you have a favorite thing that you did, or like something that's become now something like you always want to do by yourself because it just was such a great memory or experience for you?
Oh, I think my favorite one, fittingly enough, would be these smaller moments where, every once in a while I will just wake up way earlier than I need to, like hours before my alarm. And the first time it happened during the year of dating myself, it's, this cold March day, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just, impromptu coffee date. So I go out, and I really didn't do anything special. I just went to the local Dunkin' Donuts, which, especially in New England, you toss a stone, you hit a Dunkin' Donuts. That's how
Yeah,
it works here.
I have noticed that.
Literally just getting, I think I got like a coffee and a donut to go. And there's a nearby lake that's like maybe 3 miles tops from my house. And it ended up being sheer luck. I didn't even realize it, but where the parking lot is and where you're facing the lake is eastward. So you get to watch the sun come up. And so
Mm.
here I am, and admittedly, I'm freezing my tuchus off where I'm just, sitting on the little park bench by the lake watching the sun come up. And it was just such a beautiful moment, and it's just this moment of, like, peace. And, a couple of weeks or a month later, it happened again where I'm up at, like, 4 or 5 a.m. for some godforsaken reason. I'm like, "You know what? Let's go do it again." Like, it's a cheap date,
Yeah.
spending, like, maybe $5, coffee, little breakfast item, go to that same lake. And it is to the point now where, like, if I'm waking up that super early time, like, man, that is just so much fun to do of like,
Mm.
what is it like to just get that coffee and watch the sun come up?
Yeah.
Mm.
Talk about romanticizing your life because,
Mhm.
I mean, as somebody that is not a morning person, th that almost makes it sound bearable, but, like, if I wake up hours before my alarm, I'm like, "What are you doing? Stop it." So, yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to just value your own time and your own company.
Mhm.
So, I do have a question that I ask everybody at the end of each episode, which is, through the lens of your experiences, what does compassion mean to you?
Ooh, I think compassion means recognizing that everyone's kind of going through it. Like, to have that compassion is to not paint that one dimensional, two-dimensional brush on people, especially if they're doing things that aren't necessarily like either it's getting under your skin or it's, you want to do that quick one-dimensional rationale for why they're doing it. But recognizing like, no, everyone is going through it the way that, I'm going through it as well, extending out that understanding or even just kind of curiosity, like,
Mm,
man, they like, say somebody just was really big on the road rage and nearly drove you off the damn road, and a part of you just wants to like write them off as the worst human being ever, and you're ready to drive them off the road or, follow them around while blaring your horn, which I'll admit the Boston side of me will kick in when that happens. Like, road rage does not happen much for me, but if someone was bad to me when I'm driving, I want to be like, okay, we're Mad Maxing it. Let's do this. But being able to then just be like, even just curious, like, I wonder what's going on in their life right now
mm,
that they're having this much aggression on the road. And even just that little bit of curiosity, just enough so it's like, I'm not going to act on, wow, they hurt me. Time, turnabout's fair play. Let's
yeah,
go. To have that compassion in a lot of ways is to have curiosity when otherwise you would have lashed out.
yeah. I think that's a very poignant definition, and I also think it ties in really well with, kind of what we were saying earlier, and that we assume a lot about what other people's motives and what other
Mhm.
people are doing. And we never really know unless somebody flat out tells us why people do the things that they do. And we don't know the day that they've had or the life that they're living. And so it's also something that we would want people to extend to
Mhm.
us, that
Yeah.
curiosity of like, why is she behaving like why maybe she is having a bad day, or like maybe that was a mistake, like a moment where, it was bad judgment, but like it doesn't go beyond that moment. So, yeah, I think curiosity is a huge component of compassion for sure.
No, and I think about that, like, the last thing we want is for people to paint that one-dimensional, two-dimensional brush on us and just be like, "Oh, well, they're, this, that, or the other thing," especially if there's, like, a faux pas happening or any
Yeah.
kind of, like, because we all are human, we're all gonna make mistakes, we're all gonna have those moments where we lash out or say something we didn't mean, and, like, to be able to be like, "Well, I would want somebody to show that kind of compassion my
Yeah.
way." So, last thing I should be doing is then painting that one-dimensional brush on other people.
For sure. For sure.
Mhm.
I love it. Is there anything we didn't cover in the year of dating yourself
Oh my
that you
goodness.
wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we hit all the
We ran
corners.
the gamut. Good. Sometimes I'm just like, the way we go down so many twists and turns sometimes, if I'm missing something glaringly obvious, I want to give an opportunity to come back to that. But yeah, this has been such a lovely experience and something I can very personally relate to as well. So I know, especially other women, but I think men as well are going to find value in the idea of not just taking time for yourself, but investing in yourself.
100%. And I love that you mentioned that for guys as well, because this isn't a gendered thing. We all should be taking this time to learn about ourselves and have love for our own company.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. Because once again, when you are doing this for yourself, you become a better partner, a better friend, a better family member, whatever. So,
Oh, 100%. And I always think about, and this is something actually my boyfriend had said that, you always hear like, oh, relationships are 50-50. And no, it is two people 100%, bringing that 100% to the table. So we want to make sure that we're staying 100% ourselves so we can bring that 100% to the table.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're a whole person when you're in relationship. So that's, be your whole self. Thank you so much once again for coming and sitting with me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.